I'd like to call this meeting of the Bellingham Public Works Public Safety Committee to order. We have 5 items before the committee this morning. The first is a review of the Life Safety Division's 2016 accomplishments and 2017 work plan.
Good morning, Bill Hewitt, Assistant Fire Chief.
Good morning, Ron Richard, Bellingham Fire Department Fire Marshal. I want to thank you for the opportunity to discuss the Life Safety Division with you. I've been in the position now for 10 months and have learned a great deal in the position. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to share what we've accomplished in 2016 and kind of what our outlook is for 2017. So the Life Safety Division, the mission of it is really community risk reduction. That's accomplished through what we always, kind of a cliche in the fire service or fire prevention world, of that's done through the 3 E's. So basically educational efforts, engineering efforts, and that's like plan review of construction permits, and then the enforcement piece of that too, the enforcement efforts. And so our Life Safety Division is comprised of 5 members. We have myself at the division chief spot. We have 3 inspectors and also a permit technician. So it's a pretty big task for 5 folks, and it's been a really busy year in 2016 as we've seen new construction efforts or new construction permits increase and so forth. So it's been really a great learning experience for me. So the year of 2016 was really a year of transition for our division. Primary in that transition was filling 2 positions that we were down. And so there was the fire marshal position that had been vacant for about 5 months. And then I was put in that position on June 1st. And then one of our inspector positions had been vacant for about a year, and that was filled in mid-August. So along with that, there's an incredible amount of training that goes with learning those positions, especially for the 2 of us that came right from the floor and filled those positions. So there was a lot of emphasis on training. The 2 areas that I really wanted to focus on in 2016 were improving our customer service, and then, and I'll address that right here. So with our customer service, with the increase in plan reviews and new construction that was happening, there was a real need to try and increase or improve our plan review times, which we were able to do just by building some capacity there, with me ramping up my knowledge of the plan reviews. So I basically began doing the land use permit review stuff, and one of our senior inspector was able then to just focus on the building systems plan review, and that helped immensely. We were also able to institute some new policies where a re-review of some fire alarm and sprinkler systems, that time was able to be reduced from 21 days down to 7 days. So that helped out considerably too on the turnaround of our plan reviews. The other effort that we really wanted to make in 2016 was just improving or increasing our visibility out there to get the educational messages for fire prevention and fire safety out there. So we created a 12-member public education group that consists of folks both from the floor, from our engine crews, as well as the Life Safety Division. And one area that we really wanted to try and get back to was back in the schools, both public and private schools. And we were able to do that. We created a curriculum that was fun for the kids and partnered with the American Red Cross, our local chapter here. So they had some targeted messaging as well, and then just worked with the school district to coordinate getting into our public schools and private schools as well, as I said, at the second grade level. So that was a really good effort there to get back into our schools after kind of being spotty over the last 4 or 5 years, I would say. So moving ahead to, or just looking ahead at 2017, an area that we realize that we really need to try and improve our efforts is getting back into or visiting the existing buildings that we have here in Bellingham. As I mentioned, 2016 was very busy new construction-wise, and then we were short-staffed for much of the year. So a great deal of emphasis was placed on handling the new construction end of things, both the plan reviews and all the inspections that go along with any sort of new construction. So that was kind of at the detriment to our existing buildings within the city. So that's an area of emphasis for this year. And one way that we're planning on improving the efficiencies, and we've got efforts underway right now, is to utilize the rental registration software technology, because it's essentially the same type of thing that we're doing, and we can really take advantage with the city's system that is in place right now and transition that to include our existing building inspections. So those efforts are underway right now, and that's going to help a great deal, especially on our inspectors' end of things. When they go visit a building, right now there's an awful lot of paperwork that is done in the field, and then coming back, entering information into 2 different computer systems. So our inspectors will be able to carry iPads out in the field like the rental registration inspectors do, and be able to update right in the field and then email those discrepancies, or even just schedule the follow-on, the next year's inspection right there in the field and send that right to the business owner. So we're looking forward to that, and that should help considerably, and just the staffing, as I mentioned, should help considerably with achieving our goal of 600 inspections per year. We're also going to be doing a nice review, or a deep review, on the construction and operational permit fees that we have. That's an effort in 2017. I haven't started that one quite yet. And then also, we're in conjunction with our Region 3 partners, which is Skagit, Island, and Whatcom counties. We're going to be utilizing it's called Tigris. It's a company that does the third-party notifications and tracking of inspections on life safety systems. So your sprinkler systems, fire alarm systems. This company, at no cost to the city, is able to send out notifications that, like 60 days in advance, that, okay, you're coming due for your inspection, and then at a 30-day mark, same thing. And then when the inspection is done by a local contractor that goes out and does the testing of the systems, they're able to enter their test results right into that computer system, and then, again, that would go right to the business owner that they need to correct the following items, or, you know, their sprinkler system, for example, looked great, we'll be back in a year, that type of thing. So it's just a much more efficient way to schedule the inspections as well as to track them. So that effort is underway right now throughout the region. And then, again, for 2017, really trying to enhance our public safety messaging, looking beyond the schools at targeting other vulnerable populations, such as senior citizens. We've done a little bit of that over the fall of 2016, but there is a lot of work to be done in that area as well. And some of their primary concerns there would be in a like a multi-family housing for seniors, just the exiting, you know, in the time of an emergency. There's you know, that creates a lot of stress, and we have folks in those facilities that have limited mobility, so there are a lot of questions like, how do I do this? How do I get out of the building when I need to? And also just on medical calls, you know, how do we, there's a lot of opportunity there to provide them with good information in the event of an emergency of a loved one or themselves, how the fire department would respond to that and what they can do to help us. So those are really our efforts for 2017 that we're looking at targeting. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to field them.
Yeah. Got a couple questions. One on the education program for
Yes, sir.
2016. Just out of curiosity, what kinds of, when you're going in and talking to second graders, what kind of things are you talking about with them about? Yeah.
With second graders, and actually all elementary school
Yeah.
kids, it's great to just reinforce with them good fire safety behaviors to prevent fires from happening in the first place. And then also have them hopefully take the messaging home and work with their parents on developing a plan to get out of the house, and where a good meeting place would be for in their location. Okay. And then if it were a fire event, crawling beneath the smoke and things of that nature, how they could best get out of the house. But a big emphasis is placed on doing drills at home and identifying multiple ways out of a house and where to meet.
Okay. And my other question relates to the work plan on the, you'd mentioned on the fire operation, I think it was permits about working with a third party and with no cost being to the city.
Yes.
So since it's no cost to the city, does that mean the cost goes to the business owner picks that up, or how's that work? Because I know there's
gotta be
people
a
don't do
cost
it out
there
of the
somewhere.
goodness of their heart.
Yeah.
There's some catch to it somewhere along the line, and
Right.
I'm just curious how that works.
The way that works is that the service provider, so the company that does the testing of the system and reports that to us, they are charged $10 to $12 per system that they inspect. And whether they pass that on to the business owner or they absorb that themselves, it's roughly $12 for them to submit that report to us.
Okay, just curious. Gene?
Yes, I want to thank you. It sounds like you've been hitting the ground running. I want to thank the fire department for this also. You know, it's essential that both fire and police are involved in what's going on in our community with new buildings going up, new things going up, buildings getting older. And you know, we're not Mayberry anymore here, folks. We're a pretty good-sized city now, so I thank you for coming forward and bringing this forward. It sounds like you're, I really like this program, so thank you, guys.
Oh, thank you.
Roxanne?
I just wanted to thank the department too, because I know this is a major body of work, and I can see how sometimes where commitments with schools might not always meet the priority, but I appreciate that you're doing it all at the same time, because I know that's demanding. Also, just to add on a thought about educating the children, is the children could also be the advocates to help out with grandma and grandpa's situation. So it's hopefully a full circle of community outreach, so I thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would, you're absolutely right. When we target second graders for learning exit drills in the home or those other things, we know that those second graders are taking that home and teaching their parents what they learned in school today, which is just magnifies our ability there. The other thing, though, that I did want to kind of point out, Chief Richard, since he's taken over, again, when he came in, we said one of his big goals was to help improve relationships around the community and he's done a spectacular job with that. One of the items that was on the staff memo that I did want to point out, though, was Chief Richard, working together with our local Red Cross, actually put together a program that involved volunteers from Local 106, our firefighter local, that came in on a Saturday on their own time, working with the Red Cross and in conjunction with the life safety folks. And we were able to install 175 smoke alarms in 65 different residences here in 3 of our mobile home parks. That's a pretty, for a one-day effort, that was a pretty outstanding number of 65 residences that didn't have working smoke detectors. One of them was in a park where we had a fatality fire here a couple years ago, and so it's partnerships like that Ron's been able to forge here that I really look forward to the more work that we're doing here in the future and that continuing to happen. So,
just a couple final remarks for me. One, I know that education part works because when my son years ago when they were doing it was in elementary, he became, after one of those presentations, really hyper vigilant about it and it carried on for a long time about any little thing that might, and wanting to make sure, how I'm going to get out of here if there's a fire. And I mean, he was really hyper vigilant about that. So I know that part worked. I want to echo Jean's and Roxanne's gratitude to the department for all the great things that are happening, and I especially want to highlight how much I appreciate hearing about the efficiencies that have been brought to the different inspection programs and things over this past year. I think that's really important, and I'm really glad to hear that that's happening. And so thank you very much. Roxanne.
Hey, Brian, I'm just wondering if we could do any kind of community outreach about the smoke detector assistance that's been provided to the community, because I don't know if our community is really aware of how great that body of work was.
Brian Heinrich, Mayor's Office. Yeah, I think we could. I think I would ask these gentlemen if what they currently do around that in terms of public outreach.
Yeah, so actually it's, we're actually having another event here a week from this Wednesday, and we decided that that would be better to do several small events. So we're targeting mobile homes right now, since they are an especially vulnerable type of structure to a fire, oftentimes lower income, and we're finding that many of those types of places do not have smoke alarms, or if they do, they're 20 years old or more. So it's really been a great effort with the American Red Cross. They have a program and the infrastructure built in where they're getting these corporate donations at a national level that are supplying the smoke detectors to them, and so we're assisting them with identifying the targeting those efforts to go out with them and install. And also I think it just helps having some folks in uniform from the fire department advocating for the need for smoke detectors. At least that's what they've told me, that it's really helped them. So the Red Cross, just to talk about that for a second, they have a goal, I believe, by 2021 to reduce the number of fire deaths in our country by 25%. And as you probably know, most fire deaths do occur in the home, so it's a really great effort, and technology has improved. I think we've all probably been annoyed by our smoke detectors chirping after a year or two, or, and we like to get that message out to replace your batteries every 6 months. But the detectors that these corporations are supplying the American Red Cross are great because they're a 10-year battery. So once that compartment closes and that battery energizes, and we put it on the ceiling, it's good for 10 years, and they don't really even have to think about it. But yes, there's more that we can do for sure to try and get that word out to, and this is something that's available to anybody.
Well, I just want to brag about your guys' work because I think it's really good work what we're doing with that, and that's a really good story to tell.
Yeah, and we have increased our social media presence, and just recently added Facebook, Bellingham Fire Department Facebook page. And as we're getting more into that, we are trying to do better about letting folks know about the good work that's going on out there. So.
Okay. Anything else from the committee? Well, I want to thank you for bringing this forward today. Thank you. Okay. The next item that we have before the committee is an interlocal agreement between the City of Bellingham and Whatcom County for design of West Horton Road extension. Ted?
Yes, thank you. Ted Carlson, Public Works Department. I think council is aware that the city has been working on the city portion of West Horton Road for some time now, and that's from where it ends up in the Cordata area and continuing Horton Road over to Aldrich. That's within the city limits. That project's at about 30% design right now. We have a consultant on board and been working on alignment and design. In the meantime, the county was successful in obtaining a $1 million federal grant to move forward with the county's portion of that West Horton alignment, which goes from Aldrich Road over to Northwest. And that's key, that at some point we'd have that east-west connection all the way from the Cordata area all the way over to Northwest. That would provide another option to get onto the interstate at Slater Road rather than coming down to Bakerview. So it's an important project for the region. The county has been working with city staff on how can we best approach the two projects. And what we came up with was entering into an interlocal agreement. This is staff's recommendation, that the city and county work together using the same consultant so that we can get some efficiencies with the design and the alignment. The city would be the lead on the design and the lead contact with the consultant overseeing the administration of that contract. Obviously, all of our expenses occurred in the county's portion of the project would be paid for by the county through their grant that they have for this project. What's before the committee today is an interlocal agreement between the city and the county that would facilitate that, would allow us to work together on this, be reimbursed for the appropriate costs that are either in the city or in the county, and use the same consultant for this project. So Chad Schulhauser, city engineer, has been working with the county road engineer on this, and happy to answer any questions that you might have on the project, the funding, the relationship between the city and the county, and where we believe the efficiencies are. So with that.
Me?
I'll just
Gene?
go ahead and move approval. I'm glad this is going forward.
Roxanne?
Now, I know this has been a long time coming and a lot of work endured, so many options explored and continual work that will happen, so I'm happy to support it.
Yep, and I agree with that. I'm just really excited to see where this is up and, and running and ready to go. So, so you made a motion? Yep. Yes.
Thanks, Jerry. Just a teeny question. You use a word in here I didn't understand. You said that the design will minimize the road prism footprint. What's a road prism?
Chad Schulhauser, Public Works. The road prism is basically the extent of the road. You've got the crowned asphalt, curb gutter, sidewalk, and then where it would daylight connect to existing ground. So that's the road prism.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, it'll be a great project. Thank you.
One of the challenges on this project is it's pretty wet through this alignment, so we're really trying to work together to minimize the impacts to the critical areas. So that's essentially what that gets at.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have a motion before us. All those in favor, answer aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We will recommend approval to the full committee tonight. Thank you. Okay. The next item before us is the Holly Street Overlay Night Work Variance.
Thank you. Again, Ted Carlson, Public Works. council may recall when we awarded bid on the overlay paving project, which was not long ago, a couple months ago, we came to council. The limits of this project are Holly Street between Railroad and Bay. We've got the water main project that's a little bit down Holly from that, from Central up to Broadway. But at the time of the paving award, we did talk about paving at night. But as we discussed this as staff, we wanted to make sure that we're also clear that there is a minor amount of utility work that's needed on this project. Essentially, we're installing some new fire hydrants. Those hydrants need to be connected to the water main. And working with our operations crews that do much of that work, it would be nice to have the flexibility to do some of that in the evening when there's not as much in terms of traffic through there. So we wanted to make sure that we were very forthright in that, and that we did say that in addition to the paving, we are requesting variance to do some night utility work, very minor amount. We've actually done some of it during the day already, but it would be nice to have some flexibility just in case we need to do that work in the evening. So we brought that forward to council today.
So will the night utility be done during the week?
That's a good question. Have you guys thought about that yet?
Freeman Anthony, Public Works. We will likely be doing it during the week. There's currently nothing forecasted for weekend work on the schedule.
Okay, because I know sometimes on the weekends at night, it's
busier.
We've got a lot of traffic downtown and things. So, Roxanne?
I just wanted to express, excuse me, appreciation because I was in a downtown business and I got to see Freeman there, and he was helping the business out with understanding what's been going on and responding to questions, and I really appreciate that level of support. You know, it's not the business's fault that we have to do these updates, so thank you.
Okay.
I'll move approval.
Okay. We have a motion for us. Any other comments? All those in favor of the motion, answer aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll recommend approval tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item, moving right along here, guys. I like this. A resolution regarding emergency repair of a gas leak at Post Point.
Yes, thank you. Ted Carlson and Eric Johnston is here if you have any further questions about this once I'm done. But the operations crew down at Post Point, our wastewater treatment plant, noticed a leak on one of the 4-inch gas mains that serve the incinerators down there, the multiple hearth incinerators. Decided that that was an emergency repair, and we wanted to move forward with that very quickly. That meant we couldn't go through our typical city purchasing and bidding requirements in terms of getting multiple quotes and going through the process that's outlined in both the BMC, the Bellingham Municipal Code, and our own purchasing policies. So there is a section of the BMC that allows us, under emergency circumstances, to move forward in an expedited way. We got our contractor down there that was very familiar with the plant and was expert in this type of work. Moved forward with the repair. However, we do need to go back to the City Council within a couple weeks of making that decision to have council, in essence, say that you agree it was an emergency and that we're allowed to move forward with the emergency repairs. So if you have any questions about the repair work, Eric can answer that, and Matt as well to talk a little bit more about what the provisions in the code are and why they're there if you would like.
Okay, Gene?
So you instantly go to who you know can fix this thing right away, and that's how quick it works, thank God.
Yeah, who we know is capable of the work, who's available, and eliminates the need to go out and get multiple quotes, put together bid specs, things of that nature. So, in an emergency situation, as you can expect, we're wanting to just move forward quickly.
Yep.
I just move that we pass the resolution.
Okay. Michael?
Yeah, I'm really glad you guys discovered this, and I agree it was an emergency repair that's necessary. How did you discover it? I'm really glad you did. So it sounds like you must have some kind of proactive inspection. I know I'm probably supposed to inspect my hot water heater annually, and I know I don't. I mean, can you tell me about the inspection program that found this?
Well, we don't have a formal inspection program. We used our highly technical olfactory device, our noses. The crews just noticed an odor in the parking lot one day, so they called Cascade Natural Gas. Cascade came out and said, yep, there's a leak. It's on your side of the service line. We made a choice rather than to repair that leak without knowing where it was and the critical nature of that, just to replace the entire line. So based on Cascade's recommendation, we just replaced the entire service line. It was getting old. It would have to be replaced at some point in the future, so we used the emergency to get that line replaced.
Great.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion before us. Any other comments? Seeing none? All those in favor, answer aye.
Aye.
Ted?
Just quickly,
was-
just on a related note, you're likely to see another one of these emergency repairs coming before
Okay.
you at your next meeting. You may be aware of the slide that the county had on Lake Whatcom Boulevard
yes.
that blocked the street. That slide originated from a City of Bellingham-owned watershed property. So in working with the county did the work on the road itself, but the city was required and needed to go up and do some stabilization of the slope on our property. Again, felt like there was urgency to get the road opened and get moving on that quickly. So we did enter into another emergency type contract, and it has to do with whether or not it exceeds $45,000. It's a time and material. We may be under that threshold, but if it did end up being more than that, we'll come back to council with a similar item. So just a
We'll
heads up.
have that with, did you say it was 2 weeks that you need to bring it back with on the emergency?
Yeah, and working with legal, there'll be a little bit of latitude there with the next regularly scheduled
Okay.
meeting. So if we don't quite make it within the 2 weeks, I think we'll be okay.
Good, I
Yeah.
just want to make sure
Yeah.
we're fine.
Yeah, no, we're fine. Actually, if I just might add to that, I want to thank Strider Construction. They reached out to us when they became aware of it and volunteered that they had crews available to help with that service, and so we took advantage of that. They were there that same day, and we were able to help the county get the road opened on Saturday, I believe. So it was nice to get that taken care of.
Yeah, with this spring that we're having, with all this rain and stuff.
Very wet.
It is slide time. Yeah. Okay, we did vote on that, right? Did we vote?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did, okay.
Did we vote, Marie?
Yeah.
You didn't say any opposed and then motion carries.
Oh, okay.
But we did vote?
We did vote.
Okay, so, okay, we'll bring it forward tonight for a recommendation. Okay, the next item is a resolution changing McKenzie to one-way westbound between 9th and 8th Street in Fairhaven.
Thank you. Again, Ted Carlson with Public Works, joined by Rick Sepler, the planning director, along with Eric Johnston, who I think you do know Eric, not only our assistant public works director, but serves as the city's traffic engineer. So he's been very much involved in this project, along with myself and Rick and his staff. So this is a follow-up to the work session we had at your previous council meeting, talking about converting McKenzie from two-way to one-way between 9th Street and 8th Street. And as we laid out at the last committee meeting, what staff did on this was try to look at the various factors in play. We have a private development that's underway right now in this block. Private developers allowed to move forward with development, complying with our Bellingham Municipal Code, development guidelines that are laid out in the BMC, very specific street standards that are identified in the Fairhaven Urban Village Plan, and they certainly could have just moved forward and done a typical development agreement, but working with the adjacent property owner, which we think is a very good thing, tried to figure out, is there a way to try to fit all the amenities that we would like to see happen within this section of McKenzie, make those fit within a limited right-of-way. Our design standards that are pretty newly adopted through the Urban Village Plan call for a very wide sidewalk through this section, 15-foot sidewalk. So when you start thinking about wide sidewalks, the impact that might have on existing parking and impact on the traveled way, and then add to it the fact that the tennis club on the other side of the right-of-way has some designs on making some improvements and has offered to do some pedestrian amenities in front of their building as well. We all kind of worked together, planning, public works, and the property owners, and decided that the way to try to make all this fit would be by converting McKenzie from two-way to one-way. Just gives us a little bit more room in there. We would then narrow the sidewalks down a little bit from the 15-foot to something slightly less than that, maybe 13 feet. But that would allow diagonal parking, angled parking on both sides of McKenzie, pedestrian improvements on both sides of McKenzie, and still give us the 26 feet that we need between the cars for the fire apparatus. And this is going to be some taller buildings out there, and they need 26 feet for the ladder truck. That's a part of our code. So trying to fit all that in. Presented it to council last week, but certainly understandably heard some concerns from the neighborhood who had some thoughts on how this could be built in a different way, and council directed staff to go back and listen to the neighborhood and talk to their representatives about what might be able to happen along this section that would allow for two-way traffic rather than one-way traffic. And we have done that. We've met Eric and Steve Sundin from planning have been in contact with the neighborhood as well as the businesses and the property owners. And then Rick and I sat down with a couple neighborhood representatives as well to kind of try to make sure that we were clear about what their concerns were and whether or not there was ways to address everybody's concerns and still move forward with a project that worked and met the goals that are laid out in the various planning documents in the BMC. So we wanted to come back and share with council those discussions and what we understand to be the questions and concerns and what our responses are to those, and then answer any questions that the committee may have. So we've got a few slides here, and Rick's going to help me walk through some of this and facilitate that discussion that we had for council here.
Good morning, council members. What I'd like to do is start off by addressing some of the concerns that were raised and talk about what our fact-finding and result analysis have yielded on it. Concern was raised specifically on 8th Street, in essence, making 8th Street a one-way. And if you've been to the site, and I hope you have been, you see the construction was designed in a way to minimize impact on the adjacent wetland area, corridor, actually, Patton Creek. In looking at that, a concern was raised on increased vehicle lighting on the creek from the number of trips from car lighting. Right now, it's kind of hard to see because the understory hasn't returned and grown in, but there is significant screening from the vegetation that's there, and also there's topographic relief. The creek is at a lower elevation. The vehicle lights, which are somewhat limited, would not, in from our perspective, have an adverse effect on Patton Creek. Additionally, concern was raised regarding particulate emission, and that's the emissions from vehicles and also pollutant loading. And typically, that's heavy metals and oils, petroleum distillates that drop on the ground that get into the site itself. I should note by saying that traffic volumes for this area are very low. And impacts are certainly acceptable with what we establish for urban areas. Typically, particulate emission to register as a concern is when you have queuing. You have a large number of vehicles queuing for an extended period of time. You can imagine that being associated with construction or other uses. We don't see that would be present once construction is completed. Additionally, City has gone to great lengths to install new facilities for stormwater, and it is designed so any sort of petroleum distillate, any heavy metal, anything that's waterborne onto the road surface would be carried to the treatment facility before it returns to the water. So I think those are two very effective ways of addressing it. Concerns were raised regarding the one-way configuration of Mackenzie Avenue with all of the trips kind of going out. One concern dealt with the function of that intersection at 8th and Harris, and the numbers are actually quite low, as this site is really a destination rather than part of an integrated road net going through. People come for either the future residences or for the tennis club. There's not much more to connect to going this direction. Nonetheless, looking at that intersection, there is strong functionality. Right now, even at the peak hours, from one block up, you can make left and right turns with very little queuing. Queuing is how many vehicles are stacked at the stop waiting to turn. So in terms of a technical assessment, we think that concern can be addressed. Concern was raised, and there's some validity in this, about the connectivity with the existing circulatory road net. When you have two-way, for example, you do get a better use of other roads. One should note that there needs to be a reason you don't do that. Our codes typically favor trying to make sure we have best integration and we have everything knitted together as best we can. In this case, because of the configuration of the one-way exit, there are a greater number of conflict points. That's turning motions that actually put folks at risk as they try to come around and go back out. If the goal is to reduce those conflict points and friction, waiting for someone to pull out, and make a U-turn or make a U-turn at the end, you go to a one-way configuration. One-way pushes all the traffic to the arterials and truck routes rather than allowing to go back through the internal network, and that preserves capacity for the future. And as I mentioned earlier, this one block is not a destination for adjacent uses. You're not passing through it to go somewhere else. We did take a look at the two-way configuration, and it is possible at this site. Some very good points that were raised in looking at that were that it platoons traffic in both directions. In essence, half might go out to 8th and half might go north on Mackenzie. Certainly that's an outcome when you have a two-way system. The challenge on that is those conflict points we mentioned before. You are going to need to turn around. You're going to need to expand the end of the street to accommodate that motion, which means more impervious closer to the creek. And that may affect both parking through loss of number of spaces and habitat. We do agree it would be a better integration with the circulatory network, but you're doing it at the expense of parking and at those friction points. And one point that was raised we don't want to undervalue, and that is this site was a location with significant controversy in the neighborhood. And although this project is a different project, significant concerns were raised by the neighbors regarding the future and protection of the creek. Staff believes that's a very key point that should be acknowledged. But we do need to balance it in the sense that this is an improvement from the property owners who've worked together with us. As noted by Public Works Director Carlson, they could have just applied and followed the book on this. They worked to try to achieve it. And there's an outcome that's not in these charts, and that's the connection of pedestrian amenities on both sides of the street. That is quite significant in all of our planning documents. So I think at this point we feel like we've respectfully heard the concerns. We acknowledge that there is some validity. We do think that following our plans and regulations results in the proposal that's before you. We'd be happy to answer any questions regarding this proposal.
Well, first off, I want to start by mentioning I did have a request before about allowing people to address or speak here, but it came in after the packet was out, and my feeling is council should not allow, when we cannot give full notice to everybody that might want to speak, and there was no way to do that, so I didn't allow that because I think we got to be consistent with how we do those kinds of things. But you got a question?
Yes. First, I want to thank the staff for the delay and letting people sit down and go over this and listen to everybody. When I look at this, I go back to 2005 when a lot of noise was going on over there. What's going to happen? Rick, you're absolutely right. There was a lot of controversy, a lot of meetings. So we passed Resolution 2005-33, then in 06, 2006-08, and now 2016-01. I think we've gone over this a lot, and I'm going to go ahead and move approval to start the discussion, but I think that we've gotten a lot of emails the last week on this. It's been well looked at, and if we don't do this, I believe that the people who came forward during all those meetings years ago and came up with solution, and some of them putting up their own money. Do you have a dollar figure on that if it was changed back?
I don't have any.
But it would be probably a significant amount of money. So anyway, I just think it's the right way for that whole area over there, and I appreciate everybody taking the time to give everybody an extra week to listen to it.
Yeah. And yes, Roxanne.
We're stuck between a rock and a hard place with this. Neither situation is completely perfect or ideal. However, I'm going to be supporting the one-way establishment because what I need to do as a representative is think about what the long-term development is going to be, the best interest of the road, how we can get the most out of this street, and also protect the environment. These are competing forces that we have to consider all the time. And at the same time, I massively appreciate that the neighbors have been involved in this and telling us what you think about it. We have to do the most cost-effective thing and the right thing for the street, and so I'll be supporting the one-way.
I've got mixed feelings with this one. One, I got a question, Rick, about the traffic studies. The traffic study shows what's there right now. And I know that's all you can do right now, but when we're going to have added development right there, that's going to put more on. But do we anticipate that other people will use that as a throughway for those couple blocks around going, you know, people come in Fairhaven Parkway and follow it down around, and when they're heading down to the ferry terminal, heading down to Marine Park, heading down to the other neighborhoods down through there, because people do use that as a throughway. When when you're heading down Harris, just before railroad track stuff, you hang a left. Can't think of the name of the street now, but it takes us, back into those other neighborhoods. Fair number of people do use that, usually Harris. But if you're coming down, with a one-way street, do you anticipate more people just cutting across to save that area around Harris Street? Because that's always a little congestion at four-way stops in there. And
there are two parts to the question.
Right.
I'll address the first, and I'll ask Eric to respond to the second about would there be an increase of traffic of folks coming down Mackenzie and cutting around, or others, how it would fit into the net. A question was raised, and it's a good question. If at some future point in time the tennis club redeveloped, would we find ourselves with an adequate road surface to accommodate that future redevelopment? We know of no plans for it to move forward. As a matter of fact, they're in the process of doing a significant remodel, which tends to indicate they plan to stand there for a while, and certainly property owner can speak to that tonight if they wish. But we do think that any replacement at that location would be somewhat curtailed because of the proximity to critical areas. And secondly, we would look at the overall improvements that would be needed. We're not precluding expansion or changing to accommodate a future development. We've done that in the past. But absent any likely proposal in the, not even near term, in the long term, I think we have adequate capacity to accommodate the project, and when redevelopment comes, if it does come, I think we have flexibility enough to accommodate it. And I think Eric can respond more specifically to overall circulation.
Helps to have a picture sometimes. So I think the circulation in Fairhaven is pretty clear. You've got the main arterials, Harris and 10th there. The majority of people using Mackenzie, at least as I've been able to observe, are trying to find a place to park their car. If somebody's coming from out of town, they're going to come down 10th or down 12th there and want to try and find a place to park and go someplace within Fairhaven. The majority of people going out towards the west, out to the ferry terminal, are going to follow the signage that directs them out towards the ferry terminal areas. Users coming down Mackenzie or towards 8th here are looking for a place to park the car. And so an increase in traffic along this short section of Mackenzie is not likely to be significant in the realm of traffic capacity, if you will. And we did a recent count not too long ago. It was about 500 cars a day. The majority of that traffic is accessing the tennis club. There will be a slight increase by the development that occurs across the street. We measure those volumes in terms of peak hour, so it's not significant when it comes to traffic circulation. Can the street network handle that capacity? Yes, it can. Is there a way to gauge within a relative accuracy at these low volumes how much of an increase that's going to be? I think it'd be very, very difficult to do that. Of around 500 cars a day, we would consider that to be a very low volume. When we get above 2,000, we call it a low volume. When we get to 20,000, we're talking medium to high volume. So relative scale, this is a very low volume capacity issue.
Okay. So I understand, it sounds like from the request to do this, that the main benefit that's gained by doing this is we'll get a few extra parking spots.
I think that's certainly one of the primary drivers. I think it's that and working together with the property owners to maximize what can be done in this section of Mackenzie. But clearly, when we look at both the BMC and what came out of the Urban Village Plan, which was the Fairhaven Parking Task Force, the goals in that task force report and the associated policies certainly do put a premium on parking in the core and in Fairhaven commercial area, and pretty specifically both for on-street parking as well as private parking. It definitely was a major consideration to the extent that when we adopted the street standards for Fairhaven, that was one of the few exceptions that can be given administratively for reducing the pedestrian environment was, can you get more parking in the right-of-way, essentially angled parking. So to your question, yeah, that was a fundamental consideration. That along with the fact that since 8th is already one way, if you have Mackenzie two-way through there, even if you don't build a big turnaround, which nobody wanted us to do that because it extends into the riparian area, and everyone was in agreement on that, then even though if you do head-in parking, which has been suggested as a way to allow the two-way street to work there, and it does, it definitely requires removal of some parking. We don't have the exact number because it hasn't been designed, but another concern is if it's two-way going into one-way, you're going to likely have, and it won't be everyone, but you'll likely have some folks that are trying to turn around there to go back the other way because they don't want to go one way down 8th. And there was just enough of a concern that that does create a different conflict point. So when you take that into consideration, a slight improvement in the pedestrian environment because you're eliminating one of the potential conflicts of a two-way. Now it's just one way from a pedestrian's perspective. That's a little bit better. Kind of added up to, we think the one-way was the best alternative. But as you said, there's a lot of different competing interests here, and we understand that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that kind of brings me into this conflict because I've always been a big proponent of and have argued about the need for additional parking. In the downtown, the businesses have been pushing about that for years, but yet when certain amenities that we want come up, what do? We say, oh, it's okay, we can remove parking. When we want to do things, because we got another issue coming up on the bicycle, it's okay to get rid of the parking because that's not, but now in this case, we want to do it because we want to add parking. So our consistency, you see where I've got the dilemma? And it's just how we decide to frame an issue, and the consistency gives me a little bit of problem. So I might change my mind before tonight. I'm going to think about it more. So right now, I'm going to vote. My vote will be against it, but it's only because I've heard good arguments both ways, and I'm still trying to think this over. So and I don't want to abstain from it because I don't think, that's really appropriate, but I might change it by tonight. But so, Michael.
Yeah, Terry, thank you for letting me talk. I'm not on the committee, so I won't be voting. I guess I first want to say that I do not want to do anything to slow down the current projects that's going on. I'd like us to decide this really quickly. My understanding is that if we decide for one way or to keep it as two-way, those projects will still go forward, and I want to green light those as soon as possible. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I kind of want to point out what I call the irony of 8th Street. The neighborhood has been concerned about the health of the Patton Creek and Patton Estuary for a long time, and one of those pieces had to do with trying to remove traffic from 8th Street, move 8th Street back away from its where it could be a line further away from the creek than it normally would be to reduce the impacts. And one of the compromises there we weren't happy with is having it open to one-way traffic. Okay, the irony is that compromise to protect Lake Patton Creek is now kind of working against some of the neighborhood concerns. They would like to keep the other street two-way, please, but the 8th Street decision is now kind of working against them. It's ironic and unfortunate. I want to really, though, key in on what Rick Sepler said, that in general, two-way streets are better use of the other roads. It allows the traffic the natural flexibility to people drive where they want to go. Many will go out the one-way, section of 8th. Others will not if it's two-way. It's just the presumed better configuration. I think it's a default where I want to start. And what I heard you say, I think both of you say, is that the two-way configuration really would work. It's not like one works and one doesn't work. And I think that the impacts in Patton Creek are minimal, potentially zero, potentially a little more than that. The pedestrian safety differences are minimal, maybe no significant difference, maybe a teeny bit. And so we really come down to the parking issue, which I also see as really minimal. If parking is driving our decision, and we're only talking about between 4 to 6 spaces, I don't know why we're creating controversy or going away from the normal pattern, two-way over 4 to 6 spaces. There are almost 1,800 parking spaces identified in the Fairhaven area in the Transpo plan. Over 1,000 of those are the on-street parking, and there's many other surface parking lots in the area as well. You know, I did a little math here, and I come up with 0.003 is the fraction of the parking spaces we're talking about. If parking is driving our consideration, I think that's too small a driver. So I'm trying to balance all the equations, and I'm just not seeing strong arguments for the one-way. I know you have your recommendation. I'm not saying it's a slam dunk one way or the other, but to the committee and to the council tonight, right now I'm seeing the two-way plan, if it works, really is almost as good and maybe better in some ways. So that's just my thinking on the topic.
With all my background working with the economic development of commercial areas, what I would say is that one parking spot that's an addition can help the businesses and help an area. And while we are often caught in situations where we have to take away parking or figure out creative parking or ways to support those areas, I think we should be erring on the side of adding the most spots that we can to support an area like that. Because I also think if we're disrespecting the Fairhaven Parking Task Force and their recommendations, I don't appreciate that, because those people are working hard to figure out these really tough Rubik's Cube kind of issues. So I think we should try to add.
Gene?
Yeah, and I want to respect the process, the one we're going through now and the one we went through 12 years ago when all this started. You know, this will be the third resolution in front of us, knowing full well what was in the resolution. So, you know, I know people can change their mind. I've done it many, many times. So I just respect the process, and I'm going to respect the process we started 12 years ago. So, anyway.
I will add one last thing, or one more thing, is in terms of trying to think through this. This has nothing to do with disrespecting the parking task force, because they didn't weigh in on this specific decision. This has to do with just kind of looking at how we do address things in consistency with how we address it and what does work for the best. So I don't view it as any disrespect for the parking task force, who I do respect a lot in the work they've done.
Just to clarify, it's just they work to solve parking issues in that area. So I just want to try to help with parking issues in that area. That's all.
That I can accept totally. Michael?
Well, I was going to agree with you, Terry, but I'm probably going to agree with you as well, Roxanne. So the parking task force, yeah, that parking task force exists because I put it in the neighborhood plan. That parking task force occurred because I really encouraged the administration, despite some resistance, to go ahead with it, because the administration knew that it would not be easy to solve the parking issues.
I don't need a lecture about it. We can just move on.
Well, I think the issue is that the problem with parking in Fairhaven is not so much whether there's enough of it, but how it can be properly utilized. That's the same issue we have downtown. It has to do with where is availability, and people cannot see through buildings to know where the empty parking spaces are. So I don't think it's a quantity problem, it's a usability problem.
Okay. So we have a motion before us. Do we have any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, answer aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We will bring this forward to the council tonight as Mick's recommendation. And as I say, mine is kind of on the fence with it as it is, but so don't be surprised if I do. It won't be inconsistent if I change it, because I'm trying to think through this one. Okay. I believe that's our last item for the committee. We are